here with Todd Wissler. How you doing, Todd? I've been
Hey,
looking forward to doing this interview.
well, Andres, thank you very much. I'm really flattered to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
For sure. And so, can we start? Maybe you telling us a little bit about your background.
Oh boy, my background, it has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. I'm not a PhD in anything in psychology. What I've come to learn, I didn't study in college or became a PhD in it or anything. It's what I've learned. It's from my own life experiences. I started out, I was a musician till I was about 23, 20, 24, I guess. And I, I kind of struggled with it. I had difficulties in life, um, just feeling like success was always something I couldn't attain. I guess I had low self-esteem and things like that. When I got into my early 20s, I got fascinated with uh, programming your mind to get what you want. I thought, this is what I need. This will help me break through whatever blocks I have. And so I started reading books. The first one I read was Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz.
Yeah.
Um, and I, I, I didn't seem to click with it too much until a couple years later. I came across a book called Three Magic Words
Three
by,
magic words.
right, by a fellow named U.S. Anderson. He's deceased now.
Huh.
And last name is S-E-N, not S-O-N. And it was on, the topic of using your subconscious mind power and how to develop it. And that I really clicked with. And I started to put into action what he said, using saying affirmations every day that I was the greatest musician and I wanted to be a great jazz musician. And so I was doing affirmations every morning for like a half hour, programming my subconscious that I'm the greatest jazz musician who ever lived. I'm so creative. I have the power of God in me, and it started to work. I started getting better, and musicians I was working with would say, "Hey, man, you must be practicing a lot. You're just sounding better and better." And I wasn't practicing any more than usual. I was just using my mind power. Uh, and so I kept getting better for a couple of months, and then all of a sudden it stopped. Everything went back. I was back to square one. My improvisations went back to the way it was before. I started feeling. I always felt like I had a grip around me, that was keeping me from being the person I knew down deep I could have been, the musician I knew down deep I could have been. And I was back to feeling that way before, after a couple of months. And I didn't know what it was at the time, but now I do know. And I feel that this is what makes my mind power message different. I feel I talk about something that I've never heard any other self-improvement author talk about, or law of attraction guru talk about, or mind power guru, or any personal transformation guru talk about that. And in my book, I define it as the unwritten universal law, or the missing piece to the self-improvement puzzle, that if you're dealing with this issue, you have to resolve that first, before your life will improve. So you'll hear all the self-improvement gurus say anyone can improve their life by improving their thoughts. And while that's true for most people, if you're dealing with the issue I was dealing with, what I defined as the unwritten universal law, because nobody's talked about it except for me that I know of, that you have to resolve that first before any self-improvement methodology will help you. And I define that in my book at near the very end. I don't like to say what that, I just refer in the beginning, I just referred to it as the unwritten universal given it. And I don't like to talk about what that is until the very end, because it might prevent some people from getting started. If they do what I tell them to do in my book, eventually, if they're a victim of it, if not, great. If they are, then I tell them what they got to do. So,
Awesome.
and so,
And go ahead.
and so as time went on, I got into my early 40s, and boy, my life was really, I felt like I was living hell on earth. And bad luck following me, struggling with money. And luckily, I was living in Lancaster, Pennsylvania at the time, and a friend of mine was good friends with a psychic who's one of the top paranormal investigators in the country. She's been called on by police departments all over the country since the mid 1960s to solve cases. I mean, police departments all over the world know about her. And first time I went with her, she had me diagnosed in about 5 minutes, and she knew what my issue was, which I talk about in my book. And it took me 13 years to resolve it all, and that's when my life finally got better. And so I figured I wanted to write a book to let people know that if you try to improve your life, if you take any self-improvement method and it works for a couple of months and then stops working and you're back to square one, then you're dealing with this issue that I was dealing with, which I tell people at the end is most likely what they're dealing with and what they have to do. So anyone can do this. Anyone can improve that. It's not always, it's not correct for every single person. It's correct for most people who are dealing with the issue I was dealing with. You got to resolve that. I leave that out of the marketing. I don't define what it is until the end, because I don't want to have people prejudge anything in the beginning. It might stop some people from getting into it. You know what I mean? But I do let them know at the end, and I let them know how they'll know that they're dealing with this issue if they do what I tell them. Do what I tell them to do from the beginning of the book on. And it's called Program to Fail, with a question mark at the end. And it's now on Amazon for just 99 cents, Amazon Kindle for 99 cents. So if anyone wants to pick it up, they can go on and read about it. There's it has the look inside feature, so people can read and decide if it's something that they want to pick up.
And so, what's something that your life improved when you figured out where this? What was her name? The psychic. Whenever she came to your life and kind of made you conscious of an issue that you had not resolved before, when you started dealing with that, then what was the things? For instance, examples of things that improved in your life.
I stopped having bad luck following me. Okay. The bad luck things stopped happening. I can give you some examples.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Of I had this was about when I was maybe around maybe 2000, 2002. Okay, I had a car. I was paying it off. And so I got to a couple payments left to go, and I was so eager to get it paid off. I was looking for, I'm going to make so much more money. I can get things now. I don't have this car payment. And I was thinking about it constantly. This was about maybe 4 payments to go. And about 2 payments left, I had an accident, totaled the car. I went through a red light, an intersection I'd been through a zillion times. My mind was wandering. I didn't notice the red light. And this other car came and smashed into me in the side. It was totaled. So I was back to paying. I had to get a new car. I was back to paying, making 5 years of payments. Now you can say, well, accidents happen, okay, but it had airbags. Yeah, I'm sure people have seen film or video when airbags deploy, they explode real quick.
Yeah, I've been
Back,
in a car when the airbags explode. Yeah, it's
yeah.
pretty.
In
Uh,
fact, when they first came out, a couple of small children were killed because they were in the front seat and it deployed, and the force was so great, it exploded into them. That's when parents were told, "We'll put the kids in the back seat in a car seat. Always have them sit in the back seat in case that happens." But here's how mine came out. Very slowly. They hardly expanded at all and slowly fell to the floor. Right? Can you picture that?
uh-huh.
They just came out just so slowly, didn't explode out. Now I was hit in the side, and I asked my mechanic, how come if I was hit in the, I didn't have side airbags, but why, if I was hit in the side, did the front airbags deploy? He said, well, cars have sensors all around them. But if they have deployed, why did they come out like that? Why didn't they come out the way we've always seen them explode out of there? You know. Now, if they hadn't deployed, the car wouldn't have been totaled. I could have got it repaired and still had it, and then had it paid off in a couple of months. But the fact that they were deployed, because it costs a lot of money to replace airbags when they become deployed. Um, why did they come out like that? That was my first thought when they happened. I looked and I thought, why are they coming out like that? Yeah, I was expecting they were going to come out to explode and to a big ball like in a half a second. And so I figured that something's making me struggle. You know, what if they hadn't? If they had to deploy, why did they come out like that? And the fact that they did deploy, if they hadn't deployed, like I said, the damage wouldn't have been to the point it was totaled. I could have used insurance to pay the damage and kept it, and I wouldn't have been stuck with another 5 years of payments. Here's another thing that happened. So I got the new car and all that. For people who,
You were saying that because the bags deployed so slowly, you couldn't. The car was totaled, and then you couldn't. And then the payment, it would have to be. You would have to pay more money into it.
well, right, I had to get a new. Had like two payments left.
Uh huh.
Okay,
Yeah.
two payments left on it. There I was stuck for another 5 years of car payments. I was thinking so much about getting the car paid off and having more money, but something sabotaged my desires to not have car payments anymore. Yeah.
And so you're saying that now you were gonna have to buy a new car, and then that's another 5 years of car payments. And
Right.
if you would have deployed it fast, then
Well,
the
if they
insurance would
deploy,
have covered it.
well, if they had deployed the way they're supposed to, I still, yeah, I would have had to have gotten a new car because it would have been totaled. But why did they come out so slowly? Just like, not the way that we've always seen them in film and video. They can't. You know what I'm saying? If they had to deploy, why did they deploy that way, where they hardly expanded? They slowly fell to the floor. You know what I mean? Now,
Yeah, I see. I mean, I see where you're coming from.
okay,
Yeah.
that let me try to connect it this way. So the next car I had, if you've ever had a job, or people out there listening have a job where you're paid every other week, okay, every other Friday,
Right.
there'll be there'll be twice a year you'll have a month where you get three paychecks, because there's 13 weeks and 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
not which most people think. So every 6 months will be 26, meaning there's going to be 2 months out of the year, 6 months apart, instead of getting two paychecks. Do you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Where you some places pay the 1st and the 15th of the month. Okay, so you're never going to have a month if you're paid that way. You're never going to have a month where you'll get three paychecks. But if you're paid, say, every other Friday or every other week, regardless of the dates,
Yeah.
every month except two, you're going to get two paychecks. There'll be 2 months a year where you'll get three paychecks. So it feels like extra money. So I was in this period. I started thinking, oh, we'll get three paychecks. I said, don't think about it. Something's going to happen to screw it up. Yeah, where I'm in this period where I'm getting the third paycheck, and it was winter. It was January, so I was working nights then. So I went on a break. I had about an hour left to go and work, and it was real cold, and we were going to have an ice storm, and I had an automatic starter. So I set the defroster so I wouldn't have to sit there after work. I was going to let the car run and melt all the ice off it, so I wouldn't have to sit there when I was done work and wait for that to happen. So I started it, and it started up. I went walking back inside, and like I said, I only had about an hour to go at work, so I wanted all that ice off of there. And when I came out, so I went walk, and the car was running. The lights came on, and it has daytime driving lights. That means the lights are on all the time, even during the day. So I started it. It started the engine up, and started walking back into work. And I started walking. I had to turn around and walk up the steps to go back in the place where I work. And I noticed out of the corner of my eyes, the lights were off. That meant the engine was off. Because the only time the lights go off, the headlights go off, is when you turn the car off. You don't have to turn the lights on. They're on all the time. And I thought, what's this all about? I went back, looked at it. I couldn't get the car started. So I had to get the car towed. I had to get the car fixed. And this was in that in that period where I'm getting the third paycheck, right? Meaning I couldn't have that extra money. I had to put it towards my car. So I had it towed to my mechanic. And I went back the next day, and he said, hey, I found out what caused the problem. And he said, you blew a fuse. And he showed me. You can look at a fuse for a car. It's inside a plastic container, and you can see the fuse is broken.
Mm-hmm.
So he showed it to me, and he said, now you say the car it started up and ran, and then the fuse blew. And I said, yeah. The car started up. I heard the engine. The lights came on. I could hear the engine going. And I guess maybe it was about 10 seconds later, I noticed the car wasn't running. He said, and he's an electrical expert, okay? He said he has never known something like that to happen when an engine starts and runs, and 10 seconds later the fuse blows. The fuse blows because there's an overload on the circuit. He said that it's going to blow as soon as you try to make contact, an electrical contact with the engine. It's going to blow right then. He said he couldn't even see how that would be possible, that a car would run for 10 seconds and then blow a fuse. If the fuse was going to blow, it should have happened right when I turned the key to start it, right at that second. That's when the fuse, it blew his mind. He said it didn't make sense to him. Again, that made me feel that was that hard luck stuff happening.
Hard luck, you call it?
Right. I felt like, for the longest time, I felt like I was a loser. Okay. You know that saying, born loser?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I felt. And by the time I got into my 40s, those bad luck things like that started to happen.
Mm.
Okay. He said, and he's an electrical expert for 20, 30 years. He's been doing electrical applications. And it blew his mind that the car would run for 10 seconds and then blow a fuse. He says, when you blow a fuse, it's right at the split second you're trying to turn the engine on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that were happening, unexplainable things that I know was all based on this issue I was dealing with, the unwritten universal law, the missing piece to the self-improvement puzzle. When I resolved it, things like that stopped happening. Bad luck stuff that you couldn't explain, that didn't make logical sense. Okay. Stuff like that stopped. I stopped having bad when I resolved this issue. I stopped having bad luck occurrences that weren't logically explainable. So that's one reason I knew that I resolved this issue. In fact, I still have that car. Okay. I got it paid off, and I still have it. So nothing happened that caused me to screw it up and needed a new one with only 2 payments left to go. So you want me to mention what that issue is?
Yeah, that'd be great, actually.
I try to save it to the end, but it's making it tough to explain. To get for you to get the full flavor.
Uh-huh.
What it is, okay? So, all right, I told you about using my mind power. It worked for a couple of months and then stopped working.
Correct.
All right. And then anything I tried to be successful wouldn't work. I attended a couple chanting sessions. Have you heard of that, chanting?
Absolutely, yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, I thought that might work. I was in and out of therapy with psychologists for 18 years because I trying to figure out what was keeping me from being the person I knew I could have been.
Definitely.
That was holding me back. That was making bad luck stuff like that happen. Unexplainable, stuff you couldn't stuff the things that went wrong, like having a fuse that blew 10 seconds after a car was running, that even the electrical expert couldn't figure out. And what that issue was, I told you about that paranormal investigator
Mm-hmm.
that I met. I was living in Lancaster, Pennsylvania at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine knew her. He told me about her. She doesn't advertise. There's no sign in front of her house or anything like that. In fact, she has an unlisted number. And she had me diagnosed in about 5 minutes. The issue I was dealing with was unresolved issues from a previous life.
Gotcha. That
Okay?
makes sense.
Unresolved issues called unfinished business from a previous life. If people are struggling for that reason, they have to resolve that issue first. Anything they try, whether it be mind power, positive thinking, hypnosis, law of attraction, those things are not going to work. You have to resolve that issue. Now, I'm not saying everyone who's struggling is dealing with unresolved past life issues, but those who are, you got to resolve that first. Until you do, anything you try is not going to work, because you have to deal with that issue. You have to resolve what's causing those negative issues in your life.
That's cool. Have you read the book by a psychiatrist? It's called, I think, is My Biggest Teacher, or it's something like that. But it's really good. And so he was a psychiatrist, and when he would put people on their,
Yeah. I think you're talking about Dr. Brian Weiss.
I think so. And what's the book?
He was originally a psychiatrist.
Correct.
Is this the same fella? I remember he was on Oprah when Oprah had her daytime talk show. I do know of a Dr. Brian Weiss who was originally a psychiatrist, a board certified psychiatrist, and he used hypnosis
Right.
to he had a patient, a woman patient under hypnosis, and she started to channel things about his dead son.
I think that was him.
Yeah, and he was always doubtful about having past lives and all that until that incident happened with that patient of his, because the patient would have no way of knowing his son because his son died long before he knew that woman. Now he's like the leading past life therapist.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's
Right.
so crazy because I think a lot of this is so mystified. And, you know, a lot of this is so mystified and so misunderstood. But when you read a book, like I read his book, and I am trying to remember his name, but his book was great because he was able to kind of tell the stories of all these patients that over the years of psychiatry put him under hypnosis. I think one of the ladies had chronic buttocks pain and all sorts of things. And then after a hypnosis that she saw like hundreds of years ago, she was shot in that area, and it resolved her pain when she was finished with the
Right.
hypnosis. And so I think it was really cool book because we don't really understand. I mean, there is a lot of new stuff that is coming out that maybe kind of is giving us like a little bit of clue as to why something like this could actually happen. And a lot of it could be in epigenetics and how our genes can actually store memories through mechanisms of turning on and turning off different genes. And so different memories of starvation or memories of trauma or memories of different diets can actually be imprinted into the DNA of the person. And so it's so interesting that this is what you're talking about because it is so helpful for people. These past life regressions is amazing, and it is a shame that it's not so much more common in the healthcare field because
Mhm.
people really, I mean, they really find it helpful, and it helps them, and that's just the bottom line, you know. And people that I've met that have done it, uh, you know, that has helped them a lot. Actually, a lot of people that are very peak performance people, authors, people that you would know when you talk to them, they'll say they've done past life regressions many times. And so I think is great work. And also there is like archaic records, um,
Akashic records.
Akashic records. Yeah, that's
Right.
right. What are your thoughts on that?
I do know what that is. I haven't taken the time yet to start to learn how to read them. Now, what they are, the Akashic record. See, our thoughts, everything about us, every thought, every emotion. First, let me explain to people why it is that most people don't believe we have past lives,
Right,
because they say, well, I don't. Why don't I have any conscious memories of them? I don't remember
right,
living any past life. The reason for that is, now people might think I'm preaching to them, but I'm not. This isn't religion. This isn't. This is how This is how we are.
right,
Because because how I mean, I improved. Why did everything I tried to do to improve myself didn't work until I resolved my past life issues? That's when my life finally improved. That was the thing that was screwing my life up. Now, the reason we don't consciously remember our past lives is because in each life we live, we're a completely different person. Only the spirit reincarnates. Okay. In each life, you're a different person with a different body, different genetic makeup. the only thing that's about us in each of our lives is our spirit, which holds on to all those memories from every previous life, as you talked about previously. Cellular memory. Okay, you talked about there's been, in fact, that doctor, Dr. Brian Weiss, he had on the show he did with Oprah.
Uh-huh.
She had this unexplained fear of dolls. When she would look at dolls, she would just get so hyper and she had to turn away from them.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And so he did a past life regression with her.
Uh-huh.
And she was able to recall a memory from a previous life in which she was killed in a car accident,
Mm-hmm.
leaving two very young children behind that she couldn't care for, had no one to care for them. And those, whenever she saw a doll, it brought up those painful conscious memories of those two children that were left behind when she was killed in the car accident. When that memory rose to the surface and she was able to consciously recall that memory, that fear went away. She no longer had the fear of dolls anymore. All it takes is to be able to consciously to bring those subconscious memories up to the conscious level where you can see them. Oh yeah, I remember that now. That allowed her fears to dissolve away. She said after she went through that, she was watching Oprah where Marie Osmond was on and presented a doll to Oprah. And she said, had she not been cured of that and saw that doll, she would have had to turn away from the TV. It would have been too painful for her to see that doll because it would have rekindled those past life memories of her two children that she left behind. But because she resolved it, she didn't have a problem. Let me tell you about another case. I read this article about a past life therapist in Norway named Per. His first name is Per. Hey, he's Norwegian, so they're going to have different names. Per Hogseth.
Okay.
HOG. Yeah, his first name is Per. Last name is HOG. S is in Sam. E is in Edward. T is in Tom. H. Hogseth. And he wrote this article where he had a client where one arm was weaker than the other, and he tried all kind of things to strengthen it. Physical therapy, exercise. Doctors ran all kind of tests on him, and they couldn't determine what it was. But in a past life regression, he was able to recall a memory from a previous life where that arm had been cut off in a sword fight. By being able to consciously recall that past life memory, then that arm gradually regained full strength.
Hmm.
Right?
That's cool.
And there's been cases of people who can't lose weight. They tried all kind of weight loss, even went to doctors and put on all kind of scientifically proven weight loss method, and it couldn't lose weight. They learned in a previous life they starved to death when famine hit.
And
And,
that's
and
something.
because of cellular memory, the subconscious is afraid they're going to starve again, so it doesn't let them lose weight. Because the human body doesn't want to lose fat; it wants to hold on to fat as the survival mechanism.
Yeah, they actually they've done a lot of studies on the epigenetics of famine, and that is one so interesting. And you can see it about 3 or 4 generations down. If the mice are raised in a resource poor environment where they have to starve, the way that their genes turn on and off is impacted. And then if they put their offspring in an environment rich place, they'll actually die sooner because they eat away, and and they have a higher mortality. And so yeah, it's super interesting. And in Phantom, with mice, they've done a lot of studies with starvation with this sort of thing, and looking at their epigenetics. Do you think that Um, do you think that is, in a way, our memories imprinted in the DNA?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. As I referred, cellular memory. Your cells can remember previous events. Okay, uh, like that fellow who one arm was weaker than the other because in a previous life that arm was cut off in a sword fight. So the cellular memory of that arm wasn't presently with him in his present life. Only when a past life regression, he was able to recall a memory that rose to his conscious mind that that arm was cut off in a previous life. That that caused that condition to fade away because the memory of that incident of his arm being cut off was embedded in his cells.
have you
Okay.
read the book? Have you read the book The Body Keeps Track?
No, I haven't.
Oh, that's a great, and he talks
Is
about
that
this.
is that on this topic?
Exactly right on this topic because it talks about cellular memory and mainly in the joint fascia muscles and how it can lead to different postures. And it's so
Right.
incredible because think about it. When you see a family walking around, you see the dad and you see the son. And most of the time, they have very similar postures, right? And
Okay.
so these books kind of breaks down how whenever let's say that you're gonna hit me and I back out, that even if I don't move, that memory is imprinted into my body. And so over the years, then those emotions become states, and then those states become personalities, and those personalities become character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so over the years, repeated trauma can cause the joints to act in a certain way. Low confidence, high confidence, all these things. And so the body is constantly keeping track of the identity. And and then you can see these like in offspring, both because of neurological like mirror neurons that like people just are just copying each other. And so if you hang around somebody if your dad walks in a certain way, you're more likely to, but genetically also the predispositions to do that. But how, when you start working, doing body work, intense body work, it starts helping you release these issues. And so I know this lady personally, and I know actually many practitioners in this area who help through body work. They work on people's fascia. It's very deep body work, so it's kind of strenuous and a lot of stretching, but it's quite amazing because once somebody's released of a certain posture that they had, it releases that trauma that they've had, and it's almost like the cellular memory gets reestablished and almost overturned. And in a way, this is what reflexes are.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's very interesting that this is the case. Do you think that it goes past a point that there is more to it than cellular memory? There is more to it. There is like, I
Oh,
mean,
that's part. It's cellular memory is part of it. That's part of it. Yeah, sure. There's been there have been cases where, say, a woman is afraid of sexual intimacy.
right,
All right, even with someone she loves, her husband,
right,
she's terrified. And under past life regression, she's able to recall a memory from a past life in which she was raped
right,
in a previous life. And there are people dealing with a lot of fears and phobias that they don't understand,
right,
like people who are afraid of the water. They're fearful. They don't know why, but it could be that in a previous life they drowned.
right.
All right, and only by being able to recall that memory, to bring it up to the conscious level, that's what it takes to release it. If you don't release it, it's going to be stuffed in your psyche, even though you're a completely different person. It's it's because your subconscious, So your subconscious, this is what I say in my book, you don't have a subconscious mind and a spirit. Your spirit is your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is your spirit. They're one and the same. So if your spirit reincarnates, any psychiatrist, psychologist will tell you, we remember everything that happened to us from the moment we were born, when the doctor slaps us on the rear end. We still remember that feeling in our subconscious mind. All right. We don't consciously remember because we didn't have a conscious mind at the time we were born. So if your subconscious mind is your spirit, it's going to remember everything that happened to you in all of its incarnations.
So do you
Okay?
think the spirit is the same as the mechanism that runs all the cells, DNA, the
Absolutely.
biochemistry?
Absolutely.
Is the framework, the organizational framework, and the rules that run that system?
Absolutely. Your conscious mind has nothing to do with who you are as a person. Okay? That's the mind that houses your cognitive abilities so you can make decisions, you can rationalize things. Okay? But everything about you, give me any characteristic of anybody, it's that's from their subconscious mind. It's your subconscious mind that determines your life, that determines everything about your life.
So what do you think about free will and like being able to decide to actually turn and heal these issues and turn into someone else completely?
Free will is a conscious decision. Yeah, we have free will, but if you're subconsciously programmed oppositely from what you consciously think your free will, the subconscious thoughts are going to win out. Sure, I had free will. I wanted to be a great musician, right? I consciously had a desire to be a great musician, but it was what was in my subconscious that was holding me back. Because your subconscious programming will always win out, will always determine your life.
So you
Okay.
think we have like a destiny? You think we don't?
Yep. Absolutely. Now that's not to say we can't change that. We have to become consciously aware of that subconscious programming. See, that's why I've come to learn. I told you I was in psychological therapy for 18 years, trying to uncover what it was that was holding me back. Uh, but you can't heal that on a conscious level because the
Right. Yeah.
problem's not in your conscious mind; it's in your
Yeah.
subconscious mind. As an example, in my book I do a chapter on how you can resolve psychological issues, how they have to be done on a subconscious level. I saw this interview. In fact, I start off this chapter. Mike Wallace did a segment with Barbara Streisand on 60 Minutes, and he asked her, I forget when that interview ran, maybe '05, '04, '05, something like that. And she had been in therapy for 30 years. And he said, "You've been in therapy for 30 years? 30 years you have to." And she said, "Hey, I'm a slow learner." And then he asked her, "Why does someone like you have to be in therapy? You know, it's this successful woman, you know, this superstar, this icon." And she said, "My mother never told me I was beautiful." Right? So she's been in therapy. If that was the main issue for her to be in therapy, because she needed her mother to tell her she was beautiful, trying to understand psychological issues on an intellectual level aren't going to heal you. If she had done relaxation, tried to heal her inner child, imagine she was that little girl and she was with her mother, imagining her mother was telling her, "Oh, Barbara, you're so beautiful. I love you so much. I'm so glad you're my child." She would have been healing herself because she would have been getting what she wanted. And how that works is the subconscious does not know the difference between what is real and what you imagine to be real. It can't tell the difference. So if she had imagined she was that little girl and healing her little child by rewriting history and imagine she was getting that from her mother, that's how she would heal. But trying to understand psychological issues on an intellectual conscious level, it doesn't take it takes people a long, it's not going to heal people. You got to heal the subconscious wounds.
Yeah,
And you
that's
don't do that,
interesting.
and you don't do that by intellectually understanding them. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
you're right. You're right. I think that's interesting because you make me think of states of mind and what is called a state of flow, which is a peak performance state measured with neurobiochemistry. When they measure different chemicals in the brain, they measure different brain waves, and this is the point at which, the example that I can give is a big wave surfer is going down the 60-foot wave and everything disappears. He he doesn't feel, he feels complete oneness. Time disappears. Everything seems effortless, but they have breakthroughs in that moment that can save their lives, and they develop new skills. And so when they measure, there is an evolution of the brain waves. They go from beta waves to alpha waves to alpha theta waves. And then in that state, there is a very calm focus, one focus only. And then in that state, there is this burst of gamma waves, which actually create lateral thinking and allow for new neurons to be to be new interactions to be built. And this is when they can have like these breakthrough moments. And so yeah, it's amazing, like somebody trying to do therapy or trying to break through some issue down here in an analytical brainwave is not going to happen because because the framework, the same frameworks are trying to solve the same puzzle with the same force. And once the different levels are achieved, I think people have so much more of an opening to understanding and having insights, what they call gestalt insights, and then realizing something that they hadn't before. And I think that's why psychedelics are making such a big impact in the scientific community right now. When they do studies like taking microdoses of psychedelics and then doing therapy after that, the therapy lasts so much longer is because these brain waves are being accessed in these different states of mind. And I think when you're in hypnosis, in a free flowing state in which you're roaming through whatever your brain is throwing at you from different lives and dream-like states and all these things, there is so much more of a brainwave that is almost like open up to for insights to happen, for new interactions
Right.
to happen.
Right. If you try to do this stuff on a conscious level, it's not going to work. You got to get into the subconscious.
Yeah.
You got, and why the inner child concept is valid is because
Yeah.
if the subconscious only thinks in the present, it's still seeing everything that happened to us as presently still happening.
So when you
So
say inner
it's
child,
sure, and go ahead.
yeah, when you say inner child, I think I know what you're going after. What is it specifically that you mean when you say inner child concept?
We, your your subconscious, when we're born, we only have a subconscious mind. We don't start developing a conscious mind until around the age of 4 or 5. That's why most people don't remember when they're 1 or 2, don't remember when they're don't have conscious memories of being born, because we didn't have a conscious mind then to hold on to those memories, but we had a subconscious mind. Um, so everything that the emotions we felt as a child are still presently in our subconscious mind, because the subconscious only thinks in the present. It holds everything we experience, every emotion we felt is always presently with us. Yeah, it might have happened when we were children 30 years ago. The subconscious doesn't see it as happening 30 years ago. It sees it as still happening now. All right. So the best way I can explain this is uh, for people who believe in God or a superior being. God is infinite, right? No beginning, no end. Now, for something that's why I tell people when you program your mind, use infinite terms. I always succeed. I always get what I'm not. I sometimes get what I want. That's a finite time. Um, your subconscious only thinks in the present. Something that happened to you 30 years ago, your subconscious is still presently seeing that. So that's why people that have low self-esteem, they're hurting from when they were kids. Maybe their parents belittled them all the time, told them they were pathetic, they're stupid, you're nothing, you'll never be nothing. If they believe that, as they grow older, they still presently believe that. Okay. Even though it happened 30 years ago and they see it as happening 30 years ago, the subconscious still presently feels that. That's that inner child, because that inner child is always with us. If you don't heal that inner child, if that's when those things happen, consciously coming to understand why you have those feelings about yourself is not going to heal. So if Barbara Streisand had imagined she was that little girl and her mother was looking at her, oh, Barbara, you're so beautiful, you're the prettiest little girl, she finally would have been getting what she wanted. And that's how she would have healed. She would have finally gotten from her mother what she wanted. But by going to a therapist and discussing this, understanding it intellectually, she never heals. Okay.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it's so true in so many ways that you can stay. I think intellectually is important in some way, but I think there is definitely. I mean, the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza right now, it's amazing. I mean, for many years he's been working on this, but now it's like there's so much data and scientific evidence to what he's doing to, through different states of mind, help people through the states of mind where you can measure it on an EEG and you can actually predict when they're going to hit these bursts of insight and healing and so it's just really interesting, and I think we don't know a lot about it. And I think when I read that book, I remember the name. I saw it here now. Many Lives, Many Masters. Yeah, by Brian
Oh,
Weiss. Yeah,
okay. Yeah, that Dr. Brian Weiss. Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
just
I've heard.
great.
I didn't read. I've heard of. I've heard of that book. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just what a wonderful book, because I mean I think we put as doctors there is so many restrictions that people put on us, and so many things, and like they think that you should be this way, and that if you're talking about something like this, it's got to be crazy, and it's not that crazy. Like everybody dreams, and so just reading that book, you realize how much. It's like he says in the book, I don't know how this happens. I don't know whether it's truly that they've had a past life. I don't know if it's a part of their memories. I don't know if it's something like within the epigenetics. I don't know if it's like dream-like states, but there is an experience that occurs for sure with how they relate to the world that allows them to break through certain conditions and come out feeling great at the other end. And so, look, I'm all for something that helps uh, people, So, do you think is like really past lives, or do you think is like that we lived personally, or like our genetic ancestors experiences that were imprinted into their DNA and then passed down
Oh,
from generation to
that
generation?
Yeah, that could be a part of it. Sure, we inherit genes from our parents, and they have genetic memories, cellular memories, and sure, that could be part of it. Absolutely, absolutely. All I tell people that, in fact, in my book, what you perceive and experience on a conscious level, that's just the tip of your awareness iceberg. So much of your being is on the subconscious level. I mean, just what your conscious awareness is. That's like 1% of your being. The rest of it is all subconscious. That's where it's all at. And if your problems are there, that's where you got to deal with. I talk about in this chapter, I about yeah, healing the inner child and all that.
Yeah,
I
that's
saw this.
yeah.
I saw this program. It was on traditional therapy, and they had an interview with a guy who was silhouetted. He was under a therapist's care because he was a flasher. Yeah, he couldn't control an urge to open his coat and expose his private parts, mainly to women, when he was out in public. All right. So he was under a therapist's care for that to try to resolve it. And he said he was silhouetted. You couldn't see him, you couldn't make out who he was. And he said, well,
Where, where was this that you were watching
it,
it?
it was on PBS.
Oh,
It was a documentary on traditional therapy.
gotcha.
And I remember him saying about being in therapy for this. He said, well, it's getting better. I'm learning how to control my urges more, but I know it's just going to be one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that, I said, this guy's going to be, he's never going to heal.
Right.
He's learning to control his urges. He's probably going to fight with it all his life. He's probably going to have relapses along the way. If he had determined, if his therapy had been done on a subconscious level, what was it that was causing him to be a flasher? Maybe when he was a child, he felt he didn't get the attention he deserved. And maybe that little kid in him was always looking for attention. And when he became an adult, that little kid inside of him was causing him to be that. I'm just saying that's a possibility.
Yeah, I see what you're
If it
saying.
had been to reveal to him why he was flashing, that the urge probably would have gone away because he would have been able to consciously see why he was doing that. But if learning to control his urges is not going to allow him to consciously see what the subconscious programming was that was causing him to do that, and he's never going to be healed.
Right.
Okay, that's what happens when you try to control. You're a doctor, you know. If you don't heal something, you know, if you try to deal with the symptoms, it's only when you resolve, get rid of it, that's the cause. That's when you heal. Same thing
Exactly.
on the subconscious level.
Exactly. And I think that's why I love integrative medicine, because you take all of that into consideration. You take all of these things that we're talking about. You go in deep and you do epigenetic testing, and you do uh, microbiome testing, and you do a lot of in-depth testing that allows you to go in deeper. But a lot of times where I find is when we bring patients and when they really deal with these sort of traumas, um, man, everything just starts getting better, you know. And there is different ways, like what you're doing with past life regression. I mean, that is a marvelous way, I think, that can really help so many people, and so many other different ways where people get to the root of the healing the inner child per se, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
studies show, you know, the adverse childhood adverse experience study from Kaiser Permanente, humongous study they did, and they showed that every time a child has an adverse childhood experience, such as abusive father, alcoholic mother, or neglect, or all these different criterias, if you experience, for instance, like 3 or more of those, you have like 150% more of having COPD. I mean, these sort of things are all connected, And so
Oh, absolutely,
yeah, and
absolutely.
so they've shown statistically how these adverse childhood experiences actually end up resulting in chronic disease, depression, anxiety, suicidality, and all of those stuff. Have you heard of rebirthing therapy?
Mm, no, not rebirthing therapy. Is that like prime? I've heard of primal therapy. Is that kind of is what does it do? It takes you back to the point where you were born?
Yeah, there is. I haven't done in depth of that. I've done a little bit of it. That it was almost initially with the healing the inner child work,
Hmm.
but there is some that it goes really in depth, and they use a lot of breathing techniques that to change your state of mind, and then they get you into exactly coming into the world. The point is pretty powerful. I've seen it do amazing things. Um,
I can see that. I mean, because when we're born, we have we don't have a conscious mind, but we have a subconscious mind, and those emotion because the subconscious only thinks in the present, it's going to always presently remember those things, even though things that happened to us when we had a conscious mind, they can fade in our conscious mind, but not from the subconscious mind.
and so, how do you make it? How do you access that point in which you can communicate from the conscious to the unconscious?
You what you first you get in a relaxed state, you imagine you're that little child again. Okay, the subconscious doesn't know the difference between what's real and what you imagine. Let's say like Barbara Streisand, she was dealing with this issue that her mother never told her she was beautiful. If she imagined she was that little child again and she was with her mother and her mother was saying, "Oh, Barbara, you're the most beautiful, prettiest little girl I've ever seen. I'm so glad." She would have been replacing those hurtful feelings with happy, getting what she wanted feelings from her mother, even though she was only imagining it. And even though she was an adult now, the subconscious would not have, it can't tell the difference between what's real and what you imagine to be real. That's called rewriting history in your subconscious mind. You're replacing an event with something that you wanted, and your subconscious believes you finally got it.
Hmm.
That's then how you heal.
Rewriting history.
Yeah,
That's
you're
amazing.
you're doing it in your. I do a segment of that in my book, Rewriting History. You can rewrite it in your subconscious mind. You just imagine previous events happened the way you wanted to happen, the way you wanted them to happen. You're replacing the old event with a new event. So you're rewriting how that event happened, and your subconscious doesn't know, you're just imagining. It can't tell the difference
Yeah.
between what's real and what you imagine. And if you feel those emotions that you would feel if you got what you wanted, that's another thing that makes it believable. That's how you rewrite history. You replace what you got with what you wanted to get.
Hmm. So crazy because when I was going through like a lot of work, a lot of trying to heal traumas, I found this book. I was in a library and I was just walking, taking a break, and I just found this book about rewriting memories, right? And I pulled it out. It was like this library down in Florida, huge books after books. And somehow this book, I just pulled it out and I started reading it. And he talked about how in the traumas, there is certain things that you remember, certain specific incidents. And then those incidents create an emotion and it trigger an emotion every time your mind goes back there. And so this book was talking about how you can go back to that moment and then replace that focus and change it for something else. Like if somebody was doing something bad to you, and instead of remembering something specific about that, then focus on the fact that that person was taken away by the cops or something, and you focus on the doorknob as they're closing out the way, out the door, or you focus on somebody coming and helping, or something like that, and then it starts releasing the emotional um, imprisonment that same emotion happens every time. And what it does is that it starts breaking patterns, and it breaks the patterns of that. Every time you remember that same emotion happens, the same reaction in your body. And so when I
Right.
wrote that, when I started reading that, I was like, wow, that is so interesting, and then so helpful too, for people to understand they can rewrite their story.
Yeah, because they're replacing the story with a new story, right? And they're seeing it the way they wanted to see it. Like if Barbara Streisand had done that, imagine she was that little girl and her mother was looking at her and said, "Oh, you're the prettiest girl I've ever seen." She's now getting, that little child is now getting what she wanted. She's replacing the old picture of not getting what she wanted with the new picture of finally getting what she wanted.
Mhm.
If she had done that, she would have been hit. But here she is 30 years later, still dealing with the issue because she's trying to understand it intellectually. And that the adult is not what's hurting, it's that little child that's hurting.
Yeah,
And it works because, again, the subconscious doesn't know the difference between what's real or what you imagine. It can't tell the difference.
yeah, yeah,
Right. And if
definitely.
you back it up with the emotions, to back up whatever it is you're imagining, it's subconscious is going to believe it even stronger that
Yeah,
it's real.
yeah. Huh. What is if we were watching a movie about your life, and there was a moment in the movie that we would be like, wow, what would that moment be?
If you were watching a movie about your life or my
About
life,
about your life.
um, finally healing my past life issues, resolving my past life issues.
Was there a moment or a series of moments, or one in a series of moments that you realized like, wow, like I'm
Well, it took me 13 years. Okay,
right,
it took me 13 years,
right.
um, because um, I had to. I thought that when I was thinking maybe when my mother passed away, that would have been the last thing, but that wasn't. But was when she passed away, and I sold her house and moved out of the house that I lived in most of my life and moved into where I live now after 3 or 4 months. That was like the final thing. It's like I got out of that environment that I was in most of my life where all these issues were happening.
Wow.
Okay. That's when the bad luck stopped happening and my life started getting, that was like the last thing. So
Wow.
it, with people dealing with past life traumas or um, dealing with maybe they're afraid to go in the water because they drowned in a previous life. If there's only one issue like it, but mine, there was a bunch of issues I had to resolve.
Yeah.
Okay, because as this psychic explained to me, uh, she said in my previous life, my most recent lives, uh, I was I was very successful, but and success gave me power that I abused by controlling and manipulating people.
Mm.
And I came to learn that, and on a subconscious level, That's wrong. You don't do that. So I had to resolve that. So see, we choose the life we're going to live when we're in spirit form. We choose whether we're going to have a successful life or an unsuccessful life. Okay. And she kept telling me when I was really struggling with this, she said, look, you wanted this. You chose this life. You wanted to go through this because you wanted to resolve the wrongs you perpetrated on other people by controlling and manipulating, interfering with other people's free will. You don't do that. So she said, you're afraid of your power. That's why you can't succeed. You Because success, I associated success with power that I abused, and I didn't want to do that again. And she said, how can you? That's why I had bad luck. Well, I never got what I wanted, because I don't know if you checked out my website. The first thing on my website is when you break the word success down to its most basic meaning, when you drill down, and the most basic meaning of success is getting what you want. You don't succeed when you don't get what you want. And that's why I couldn't get what I would want. I associated with success with power, and I didn't want to abuse my power. So that's
Tell me about.
why.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So that's why. And what I learned from her is, how can you? That's why. So why would people? So if we choose the life we want to live when we're in spirit form, why would some people choose to be a loser in life? Okay, not being successful, not getting what they. Why would anyone want to choose that? And what I learned from her is, we will choose an incarnation in which we will correct the mistakes that we made in previous lives. So how can you learn from those mistakes if you don't subject yourself to the same thing? Okay. How she called it putting the shoe on the other foot. What I learned, see, there's a difference. I talk about in my book. There's a difference between religion and spirituality. Okay. Spirituality teaches that there's no sin. We don't go to heaven or hell depending on how good we or badly we lived the one life. The spirit reincarnates, and if this, we make mistakes that need to be corrected. That's why the spirit reincarnates. It will return as it will choose an incarnation where it wants to correct those mistakes. So if it's correcting mistakes the way it treated people badly, how can it learn from those mistakes if it doesn't choose a life in which it subjects itself to the same thing? That's what I came to learn. That's why I was struggling. That's why I couldn't get what I wanted. That's because I was
It's almost
afraid.
like, Wayne Dyer talks about this a lot, and he talks about how in his latest book, I can see clearly now, before he died, he talks about this, that I can see clearly now why I went through that, because he was like a foster child and he went from home to home, and he became a successful entrepreneur, author, and he helped a lot of people heal and overcome issues. And he talked about that, um, that we choose what we're going into. It's like the bigger the struggle, the bigger the hero,
Right.
and so and then I heard you talk about no failure. That failure, like, imagine a time when there is no failure. Tell me
Right.
about that.
I said it in my book. The
Yeah,
first chapter is a
exactly.
failure-free life.
Exactly. So what does that
And
mean to you?
I pose that question. I mean, can you have a life which you never fail at anything? You know, and uh, and I conclude that chapter by saying, you're going to think it doesn't make logical sense to believe you never fail at anything, but you can get your illogical subconscious mind to believe you never fail, because the subconscious will believe anything,
And what's the benefit?
that you'll have more successes than failures.
That's interesting that you say that. You know what you make me think of? You make me think of artificial intelligence. In artificial intelligence, a failure is not a failure. When they're right, the algorithms, when they
Mm-hmm.
try something new, is just a nudge. It's a node of information. So it's just another node of information. It's
Uh-huh.
artificial. It's just growth. And so that's interesting that you mentioned that, because hey, what's the meaning of failure? Like, what is really that word? He said, yeah, when we get down on our knees and we get knocked down in the darkest pit of our lives, oftentimes that's what the worst day of our lives becomes the best day of our lives. And so
Well, that's why, see, that's probably the biggest stumbling block for people trying this, trying to use their mind power, is because it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. Okay. It, it doesn't make sense that you could never fail. And that's true. But your subconscious is not your logical mind. It's your illogical mind. It's your irrational mind. It will believe anything. It never questions anything you tell it. Okay? It 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 That's why science is skeptical about these things, because science deals with rational thought. Everything has to be logically and scientifically proved, right? But your subconscious is your illogical, irrational. It will believe anything. And science will never believe something that's illogical. But you can get your illogical subconscious mind to believe you never fail. And when you do, your failure rate will significantly go down. Yeah, you're going to fail, but not as much as you would.
do you think the failure goes down not because it goes down, but because every failure is not failure, is learning?
Well, that's true. Yeah, but failure is learning, but I think I think we all want to fail. Then I think we all want to succeed rather than fail, even though failure is for learning. That's true.
I see what you're
But
saying.
I think what we consciously desire is
Yeah,
succeeding all the time.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
I tell people, like, in my book, that if you're going to program your subconscious mind for success, and because your subconscious is, that's, people talk about how it's so powerful. One reason it's powerful, because it's not confined to the boundaries of logic. Logic has boundaries, right? You can't do that. You can't. That doesn't make logical sense that you can do this. Okay, but there's no boundaries in your subconscious mind. So an example I use: say you want to be a great baseball player. Right? Program your subconscious mind to believe that with every swing of the bat, you hit the ball out of the ballpark. Program your subconscious mind that with every swing of that bat, I hit that ball out of, I see it going out of the fence. Now, will you accomplish that in your real life? No. But you will hit many more homers that way if you program your subconscious mind with a more realistic one homer every 8 games. See, I go one chapter, I go beyond realistic goals. Realistic goals, go ahead and write your goals realistically, but program your subconscious mind that you've attained impossible goals, illogical goals. You'll get there faster. And if you program your subconscious mind, I hit a home run every 8 games, you're not going to hit as many as you would if you program your subconscious mind to believe you hit a home run with every swing.
Yeah.
But in the real world, don't get disappointed if you don't hit a home run with every swing. It's just know that you're trying to get to your goal. You're trying to be a greater player, trying to go from mediocrity into greatness.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just interviewed this guy who's a great. He's transformed the educational system in the U.S. and he was telling me the story of Serena Williams when she came out of pregnancy, I think, and there was a point in time where she was uh, failing in that game. I think it was the U.S. Open, and it was going downhill for her. And then she let out this primal scream and stomped her foot on the ground. And then after that, she started turning around the game and she won. And then later in an interview, they asked her like, "What were you doing there?" And she said, "Well, I was reminding myself that I am the greatest
Right.
tennis player in the face of the earth."
Right.
You know, and so that's powerful, man.
Yeah.
That's sort of like
That,
it's like this book, like this is how you talk to yourself. You know, like if you're gonna talk to yourself, this is
you,
how you talk to yourself.
absolutely. She I tell people that it's because the subconscious is infinite. It only thinks in infinite, absolute terms. Take your affirmations and go be think illogically. You're the great. You always win. Not you. Most of the time you win. Most of the time that's a finite term. That's not an absolute term. Okay, that's not an infinite term. Your subconscious, because your subconscious only thinks in the present, it only thinks in infinite or absolute terms, not in partial terms. So that's a perfect example. She is the I am the greatest, not oh I'm one of the best,
Right.
but the greatest.
Yeah, there's a different game. There's a different ball game, you know? And it's like Shelby. Shelby used to say, you know, the race car driver. He used to
Right.
tell his son, imagine out there somewhere, there is the perfect lap, where every turn is at the perfect speed.
Yeah.
Every, every acceleration is perfectly done. And so out there somewhere is the perfect lap. And I think that's so great, you know, in business, in anything, to have that mindset. And so I love that. That's illogical, but that thinking gets you to think, okay, how could I do that? You know, how could I do that? If believing that helps me, how could I do that? How could my client have the best experience? How could a patient have the best experience, the perfect encounter? You know, and so yeah, I think that's very helpful to think that way.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what
great.
I tell people because your subconscious isn't logical. Don't make your affirmations logical. Make them illogical.
Huh.
Make your subconscious believe you attain impossible goals, goals that you can never attain in the real world. You'll only be better than you will be if you program it with realistic goals. Realistic goals just keep you kind of average, you know.
That's great, Todd. Todd, it's been great talking to you. What's next for you?
Just my getting my book out in paperback. It's like I said, it's on Kindle now for 99 cents, and then they'll move into the hard launch where they'll come out with the physical book.
Nice.
Might be in a couple of weeks, and they'll start advertising it, and they're going to write us some press releases and advertise. It's about 50 websites they're going to advertise it on. So I'm just waiting for that to happen, and so that's the next phase with this. Plus, I
Great.
wrote a couple. Plus, I wrote about 3 books on past life regression.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. And so you help people with this. And so, right?
At the end of the book, I tell people will be able to tell in the main book, this program to fail, the question mark, the one that's for 99 cents on Kindle right now. They'll know at the end. I let them know how they can tell if they're dealing with past life issues, and then I direct them to I have 3 past life books. They're they're short. They're kind of short, but it teaches them past life regression. Yeah.
Really cool, Todd. Well, thank you so much for being in the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation, Andres. I really appreciate it. I
For
thank you so
sure.
much for letting me come on and talk. I love talking about this stuff because uh, too many people, and it's not. I'm not putting people down. It's only because of my struggles that I came to learn this stuff, and determined to uncover what was causing my problems. So
Right.
too many people think it's the conscious mind that determines what our life. No, it's not. It's what's in your subconscious. Just think of just I say this in my book. What we perceive on the conscious level, that's just the tip. That's maybe 1% of your awareness.
Yeah.
The rest is on the subconscious level.
Right
So again,
on.
I thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely.